The sound of men's battle cries roared out. Spear against shield. Sword against shield. Everything happened so quickly around me. I wasn't on the front lines, bearing the brunt of the clash. Instead, I was in the middle, suffocated, yet at home on all sides, waiting to be at the front and joined in the cheers, all to grant us courage. When the man in front fell, I think he slipped, a costly mistake, as a short sword was driven into his neck. My face was coated in blood and sweat. Neither bothered me as I continued on my task. The man on the right of me, whose shield protected me, my friend, Alexandros. We were born in the same village, lifelong friends. A burst of blood sprang up from his neck before he fell to the ground, only for another to take his place. The newcomer's shield protecting my left side. My best friend was dead. There was the clash of shields, with large hoplites piercing and pushing the enemy back. My spear was broken in the process, dropping it and drawing my sword. I yelled, with the enemy's arm raised and leaving him exposed. I took my chance and stabbed, first his underarm, then his neck and face. A dread chorus of war chants as men called on Athena, Ares, and all the other gods of war. Phobos, the god of fear, had caused the enemy to start breaking ranks. Their lines became disorganized, allowing more of their number to be cut down. With a final cry of panic, they started to flee. For a moment, I was winning. Blood stained the battlefield, and a cry rang out. Then, there was nothing. I had this dream since childhood, and they continued up until my early 20s. I'd wake up breathless, pain gripping my body, and without understanding why, haunted by the images I had seen. It was faster, more dangerous than any movie or TV show had ever conveyed. Every second night or so, I would become the nameless soldier with only memories of his past life. I never knew his name. I long pondered writing them down, trying to piece together the few glimpses of what I assumed was a past life. And over time, I started doing it, filling up journal after journal, mere fragments of a lost life. The initial shock of sights of the battlefield soon numbed from the repetition, only to find it wasn't a singular battle. Through my dreams, I saw his life, my life. Every glimpse was precious, even if I never managed to see a complete picture in chronological order. It felt worth it. My journals were a well-guarded secret. I never told anyone about this, not my friends or my family. I don't think either side would have mocked me for it. One of my friends, Brent, found my journal with the diary entries and drawings. Flicking through the pages, it was mostly written in haste before I'd forget it. Most of it was barely readable. He asked me if I wanted to write a book about it sometime. I remembered laughing awkwardly, snatching it away from him, and masking it with excuses as to why he couldn't look. In the process, our forearms bumped, and that was all that was required. When we touched, a memory was awoken. Suddenly, I was back in time, with the heat of the sun bearing down on me. I was bare-chested. No, naked, training in the gymnasium, unconcerned by my nakedness and by those of others. No women were in sight. My friend, Alexandros, held a javelin in his hand and tossed it at me. I caught it easily and threw it at the training dummy, striking into it. The image started to blur, merging together for just a second. Brent and Alexandros had similar eyes. Grey. Even their expressions were similar. Perhaps a long-lost connection? A distant ancestor? I wanted to tell him. But how crazy would it be to tell my best friend that he was my best friend in a past life? I considered it was private and a mystery I needed to solve on my own. Not all the memories were invasive. Occasionally, I'd hear Allah shouted in many male voices with the clashing of shields while I was studying. Teachers and I would argue about how to pronounce words or phrases in ancient Greek. Spear against shield, my heart would race, and I'd feel the urge to fight. I tried to mimic the sound when I was alone, only for the words in my mind to clash with how my mind worked in this body, inside my body. Through a brief moment of research with a Google search, I discovered that Allah was the personification of the war cry, a minor entity in the Greek pantheon. Was this why I was fascinated with the sound? I felt out of place, out of time. The religions and languages were all wrong. Even the rare times I'd see depictions, they would all be false, even if the history book said otherwise. I knew what I thought was true. I come from a family of eccentric personality types. People well outside the norm. My father preferred his paintings over time with us, but showed his love by painting us in all of his artwork. Sometimes at the foreground, yet other times in the background. However, all his time was spent inside his studio. My older sister was far away on a dig site, and I rarely spoke to her. I dreamt of a larger family, several generations under the one roof, grandparents and children. I had some of my own. I knew I was married, but I rarely heard her voice. Only a touch, a glimpse, and then nothing. I remembered pacing while she screamed while giving birth to our child. I am a father. Not this current family. While kind, they weren't my real one. My mother, the one from the current lifetime, always loved antiques, so our house was full of them. They were all relatively tidy and well placed, but there was little to no free space. She'd source them from garage sales, antique stores, or the local trash and treasure. She never cared about matching the decor, but each piece somehow managed to work. She'd pick it up and tell me she'd have a sense about these things, declare how much she loves it, and it would come home with us. An old book, a statue or ornament, a map or an old weapon or two, from all over the world and from all the time periods. She never discriminated. Whenever I'd ask her questions, she'd leave it to me to find the solution. She'd hum to herself once she brought home a newfound prize, finding the perfect home for it. And in a month or two, you wouldn't know it hadn't been there forever. Her excuse was that the pieces were lonely and needed a home. I thought that's what every family did until I went to my friend's, Brent's home. Everything matched and was in its proper place. She brought home a new vase. It was large, up to my knees, and she was fussing, turning it from left to right, while trying to find the right position near the door. One of the rare empty spaces in the house. It had a woman with an owl on her shoulder, holding a spear on horseback, a helmet and shield at her side. It was yellow and black mostly, distinctly Greek. I couldn't remember the exact time period. By her side, there was a beautiful ornate box decorated with different crystals along the edges. But what drew my eye was the Corinthian-style helmet, with only a hint of the face shown, with the heavy cheek pieces and nose guard down the middle. The eyes would be concealed with the almond-shaped eye slots, and there was a strange engraving along the neck guard that I couldn't read. I wonder what it could have meant. Lastly, it had a red plume, and it looked like a later edition. It wasn't even real horsehair. I had to resist the urge to rip it out. I wondered how she managed to afford these items. Even replicas were expensive. I asked her where she'd gotten them, and she told me that a collector's child was ill, and they needed the money to pay for the surgeries, and therefore she had gained a massive discount. Looking over her shoulder, using her middle finger to push up the thick glasses up along her nose. Reaching down, I picked it up with both hands and feeling the weight of it. Who wore this? How many people wore this? Questions were raised while I turned it around, finally staring at it where the face should be. I had a feeling it was mine. I knew it was mine. My fingers clenched on it, unwilling to let it go. Suddenly a face appeared inside, the ghostly one of a man, and staring at it with my mouth wide. I looked over toward my mum to see if she had noticed. Instead, she was focused on lining up the books on the cluttered bookshelf, oblivious. Returning my gaze, the eyelids opened to reveal nothing but empty black pits. The skin rotted away, leaving traces of skin and dried muscle. And finally, those too melted away. It and myself took a sharp inward breath, and with a scream, I dropped it on the floor, instantly wincing as a headache struck me, my hand attempting to soothe the ache, and staring down at it, the same face disappeared, fading into nothingness, and the helmet was now empty. I tried to show her, but she tissed and waved me away, not even bothering to look up from the latest antiques listing magazine, telling me I was just creative, with an overactive imagination, and being around beautiful things would encourage it to grow, just as she planned. Once I picked it up again, I was too scared to put it on my head, but unwilling to part with it. I placed it down on the floor and prepared for bed. I knew the dream would come soon. The nagging feeling had always impeded on whatever I desired. Once my routine was complete, I curled up under the covers. And soon, I was on a long march along a dirt road, with the rattling of armor, a spear in my hand, and the sun was mellow in the sky. There were parts that were steep. We were in the mountains and traveling. The shield on my back, a trickle of sweat down his or my face. I didn't wipe it and let it trickle down. I was surrounded by soldiers, dressed similar to me in the front and back, all moving in unison. I felt a necklace behind the shield holder, dangling down. A talisman. I knew it was from my wife, given to protect me in battle. Blessed by the women in my family. I hadn't seen her in months. I never met my unborn child. Blinking awake, and I was back inside my body. The wrong one. There was never anything wrong with it. It just never felt right. Laying on my back, arms loose by my side, and safe in bed, gazing up at the ceiling. The morning light was faint. Too early to get out of bed, and too difficult to fall back asleep. I didn't know the faceless soldier's name, or what my name was, or which Greek city he originated from, nor how he, or I, died. A heaviness took her, my sight with messages that craved to be told. With each sedated and steady blink, and soon returned to the physical form. All the way back in time. It was night, a chill in the air. The moon shone down, and the aroma of incense filled us. Men were gathered to offer prayers to the many gods of the Greek pantheon. I recognized some with my eyes, but all with his. A feeling of hopelessness filled the air. Come morning, most of them will be dead. Perhaps he or I was showing me his last moments on earth. Gazing out at the other soldiers, how many of them were forever nameless, who they were forgotten by the world. I casually placed the helmet on my thigh, marked and scarred from previous conflict. I felt the plume, this time black in color, made from the horsehair of a stallion. It was smaller than the artificial red one. It was how it should be. Holding it in my arms and staring at it, running my fingers through it. The urge to place it on my head grew. I wondered if I did, would it be locked there? My alarm yanked me back to my time and place. Groaning loudly, it ached each time I was pulled away, returning to a time that I no longer felt like I belonged to. The noise was often unbearable, the constant buzzing of machinery compared to the silence of the hills where I was. Home. I rolled out of bed, feet on the floor and my head resting in my hands, giving my reflection barely a glimpse. My features never matched what I saw inside. The helmet was on the floor where I left it. I went downstairs to talk to my mother, only to find the kitchen empty, with only a note to let me know she would be home late. Not the first, nor the last time it would happen. There was a listing book of available antiques that was open on the kitchen table. There were ancient Greek artifacts, and I nearly closed the book, when something familiar caught my eye. It was a Xiphos, an old, chipped but still strong, polished short sword. It didn't look the same as how I remembered, but I felt like I was slowly returning home. It was perfect, and while there were a listing for many more items that were in better quality, all I wanted was this one. I knew I had to have it again. Placing a bid for it with my mother's credit card, and hoping she'll be thrilled with the latest purchase. The memory of it being in my hand came back. Reliable, firm, and holding it. How many men had fallen to it? How many lives were taken? I sensed its arrival before I saw it. It came via post. My mum had to sign for it, and rushing to open the box, holding it in my hand. Deep down, I knew it was mine. My mother was absolutely thrilled, thinking I was taking an interest in antiques, just like her. Holding it, I was back in the courtyard of my old house, having been blessed with it. I made offerings to Hephaestus to keep my weapon strong, all in the hope he would ensure the tip would remain sharp and not bend on the battlefield. I held it up in the air, and the memory faded around me. I was back home, staring at it in awe, and placed it on my desk. Each day I held it and remembered. That night I dreamed of Alexandros and a man with a grey beard, an older man with wisdom, a respected elder, and at night they came to speak with me. The home dark except for the oil lamps providing minimal light. I remembered offering them wine and they accepted. Their faces were solemn. Leaning close, they whispered that soon we would be called upon to defend our home. I could hear my wife in the next room, and knew both of us had to accept the decision. I held her in my arms, her soft body held close to mine, and I bent down to kiss her forehead. It was the night before the march, the last time I would see her. We embraced and went to bed, enjoying the intimate warmth of her flesh, and prayed the gods would grant her the blessing of a child. I promised I would make it home to her. I failed. I never returned home. She was left alone. A spearhead from what had been my weapon. The very same I held when I passed away. Rusted, with the tip chipped off, and it had waves from the decay of time. Despite this, it was still perfect in my eye. The wood had long been broken or rotted away. Back on the battlefield, we were winning. Their hoplites were being driven backward. Night had blessed us until there was a thunderous sound of cavalry. The screaming call of Eris and the other war demons seized control. The lines were broken. The attacks came from the right flank, and we were cut down. An attempt to make a stand held, yet we were overrun. The set was not complete, and I was close to giving up on my search when I nearly tossed a brochure into the recycling. An image of the Temple of Athena, the Pantheon, on the front cover, in ruins rather than how I remembered the structure. A calling drove me to accept it. Immediately I bought an expensive all-day pass. It would give me all the time I needed. I didn't tell my parents about my trip to the museum, or what I had planned. My parents in a rare moment were together at the dining table, eating breakfast. They looked in my direction. Silently I sat down and filled my bowl with some cereal. There was a strange silence, a quiet moment together as a family, and I wondered if they suspected what I needed to do. Once I stopped, my father or her father wrapped an arm around me, and when the hug broke I saw tears in his eyes. My mum did the same, adding a muttered, "I'm so proud of you," picking up my swollen backpack that rattled, hiding the helmet, sword, and spearhead inside. Walking to the bus stop, I saw them watching me leave through the window. The bus trip was boring. When I arrived at the museum, there were busloads of people walking around. Wandering around the outside and feeling the warmth on my face, it all felt bittersweet. I expected for my bag to be searched when I arrived, but since there were so many school groups, I was able to slip through. Hermes was opening pathways for me. I stood inside the massive foyer of the museum. The ancient Greek exhibition had pieces from private collectors and from libraries all over the world. After waiting here all day, through the late afternoon and right before closing time, there were fewer people here now, leaving me to wander the empty halls to explore without feeling rushed. My aspis, a shield, broken and scratched, with most of the wood disintegrated through the passing of time while the bronze remained. It had been unearthed in a dig where other items had been taken. My grave, disturbed, the items traveled across the oceans. My hand pressed on the glass, and I remembered when it was first placed in my hand. A longing, wanting it to return. The carriers, spirits of violent death through warfare, had claimed me. The forces unseen, and their impact the same. My spirit remained watching, away from my body, witnessing the carnage and screaming until it was over. Broken men and animals cried out. Some granted a fatal mercy, while others were seized to be taken into slavery. The victory gave the army time to honor and bury the dead. I remember being cleansed of the gore, a wound down my shoulder, a killing blow coupled with others, buried in my armor with my weapons in my hands. I remember the chanting, watching as the bodies of the elites were prepared to travel back to be honored at home, while soil was thrown over me, concealing my body, and I didn't see the sky. Both my corpse's memory's hand and my living one felt a figure placed inside. I must have dropped it during the chaos of the battlefield. A tear pricked at my eye only to fall down my cheek. Memories of my wife, Almathea, lingered. Flashes of our wedding day, the birth of our first child. A boy? Hekatos? My son. All leading up to me telling her that war had been declared, and I would go. Her large dark eyes framed with thick eyelashes stared at me with fear. I could return maimed, or with a broken mind, or not at all. The last one happened to her. Not even allowed to cleanse my body and prepare it for burial. Her round face was skin tanned from a life in the field. I remembered the warmth, the memories. They were gone. So long ago that time no longer mattered. I saw my reflection in her eyes. The first and last time. A long aquiline nose, coupled with a dark cropped beard, and eyes nearly as dark as hers. My face was scarred and slowly morphed to a living corpse, bruised and barely clinging to life. With a blink the memory faded, caught between worlds, and with a longing for death that had been denied to me. I didn't care if I had to pass through Hades on my way to Elysium. And finally, the necklace that she gave me. It was small. The head had been chipped, and the fragments barely held together. I remembered embracing her and my children, one final time before the march. So simple. It wasn't made of gold, special gemstones, or even semi-precious ones. It was molded from clay around the family farm. The museum, the place where the sacred treasures of my life remained. There were many statues of the gods, some correctly identified and others mistaken. I debated which would be best to hear my plea. I sought out the joint statues of Hades and Persephone. In one of the corners behind the statues of Pallas Athena with Nike on her shoulder, and Ares, naked and ready for war, bearded with a helmet, shield and spear. Each was standing still, the color stripped from the stonework. I had no worthy offering to give either of them. All I could do was pray for their guidance. Placing the helmet on my head, my vision of both mine and his blurred into one. The spearhead at my feet, and my shield rested on my knees. Stripping off my clothing and standing naked in a different body, now shed of the modern clothes, discarding them by tossing them away. Dressed in a state befitting the Olympic Games, with only the treasured items in my hands, and I'd step through the portal. My body would change and time would be restored. I'd be forever forgotten, faceless, and yet it was where I belonged. I knew they'd try to stop me. People from modern times who would think my mind was unwell and I was in a crisis. Walking toward the doors, dragging chairs and statues of gods and figures I didn't recognize. I wasn't going to let them slow me down. After blocking the doors, I returned to Hades and Persephone. "Forgive me for my miasma," I whispered, gazing up in devotion and falling to my knees. Surrounded by statues I recognized. I was so close now. Soon, the world would be in order. The security alarms were going off. The red was flashing in the distance, with people striking the door to force it open, only to have the weight of the statues preventing their intrusion. I knew they thought I was insane, driven by hallucination, and they would never understand. Taking the sword at the hilt, laying it flat on my hands as an offering, and I knew the gods would not accept human sacrifice. It was the last thing I had to offer them. Hades, master of the underworld, and Persephone were motionless, waiting to see if I had the courage. Both hands on the hilt, the tip pointed at my chest between my breasts, and waiting. Still, they gave no sign. Two aromas, one dark and earthy, deep from the confines of the earth, with a hint of floral. Then a sweetness, the scent of pomegranates, with a trace of grain filled my nostrils. I knew the gods were with me. I cried out when the tip was plunged into my chest. The gods opened their eyes, watching me fulfill my oath, and a hoarse breath escaped my lips. Using all my strength, I plunged it further into my chest, and collapsed bleeding before the statues. My blood spread in all directions, coming close to every statue in a dread offering. Breathing my final breath, I watched while he stood. My soul, nude and with the scars of where his death had been, connected through the items used in death. No longer burdened by my old vessel, no longer needed or considered. Looking back at me, no, I was looking back at my old body, the wrong one in the incorrect time. I jumped when the ground beneath us shook violently and caused the destruction of the other statues, who fell apart when they crashed to the floor. A loud crack forming and shattering of tiles, while a long pathway opened up below the earth. A mist crept from below, a whisper of death. It was time. Stepping down, leaving the old world behind and trusting the gods. I walked down the stone steps, the aroma of sweet air with a faint shadow around me, lit with oil lamps, yet it was still incredibly dark. Above me I heard people calling out to my body, "The wrong one," trying and failing to bring it back to life. Many guiding hands reached out to me, spirits of those who had been lost and then found. Water stirred beneath my feet, barely up to my ankles as I walked, and seeing others whose corpses had been lifted and moved, all who had made their way back home. Behind me, I could hear the cries of the modern world. People who were gathered around her, no, my corpse. A hand clasped my own, fingers curling around it. A sense of peace held me, and I knew it was time. I heard one final phrase, while the world above closed and left me inside the underworld. A voice in the shadows among the many faceless souls. Good to see you come home, my love. At last, we're together. I hope you enjoy this story. What did you think of it? Let me know what you thought in the comments section down below. Don't forget to stab the like button, subscribe, hit the bell and leave a comment. This video is made with the support of my incredible channel members, Patreon subscribers and all my viewers. Thank you so much for supporting me. Don't forget to check out my social media accounts below, including my merch. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.